him go! Let him go now! Get away from her! Police, stop!
It's okay, ma'am. He can't hurt you now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, officer. And your brave dog.
The parking lot seemed quiet, just another evening in town, until Duke, the German Shepherd, suddenly froze. His eyes narrowed, ears pointed, his growl low and steady. A few steps ahead, an elderly woman was being guided toward a van by a man whose smile looked friendly enough. But Duke wasn't fooled. His barking shattered the calm, sharp and unrelenting, every sound echoing with warning. Officers nearby turned instantly, sensing that this was no ordinary disturbance. The truth hidden behind that van's open doors would unravel a dangerous plan and expose a threat no one had expected. In that moment, the fate of an innocent woman rested not in human instincts, but in the loyalty and sharp senses of a Marine's trusted dog. If you believe in the courage of canine South like Duke, subscribe to Shepherd Legacy and tell us in the comments, which city are you watching from right now? The grocery store lot was bathed in the yellow glow of overhead lights, the pavement glistening faintly after a drizzle. Shoppers came and went, carts rattling, bags rustling, the usual rhythm of an ordinary evening. For Thomas, a retired Marine, these quiet trips were a small comfort, a reminder that life outside combat zones could still feel normal. Beside him, Duke trotted steadily, his tan and black coat gleaming under the lights, his black harness snug against his muscular frame. Duke had been trained for the field, his senses sharper than most, his loyalty unshakable. Thomas had long since learned to trust his dog's instincts without question. As Thomas loaded groceries into the back of his truck, Duke's posture shifted. His ears pricked forward, body stiffening, tail rising. Thomas followed his gaze across the lot. Near the far row, an elderly woman shuffled carefully with her cane, her gray coat hanging loose around her frail frame. At her side, a man about mid-30s hovered close, one arm lightly around her elbow, guiding her toward a dark van with sliding doors open wide. At first glance, nothing seemed wrong. A helpful stranger, perhaps. But Duke's growl said otherwise. It was low at first, barely audible, but then grew louder, rolling from his chest in a way Thomas hadn't heard in months. "What is it, boy?" Thomas murmured, narrowing his own eyes. The man's movements were subtle, but not careful the way a caretaker might be. He glanced around too often, his grip on the woman a touch too firm, steering her quickly, as though time mattered more than patience. Duke barked once, sharp and powerful, making heads turn. Shoppers paused mid-step, startled. The man froze, his body stiffening before forcing a smile. The elderly woman looked confused, glancing from the dog to the stranger at her side. Thomas's instincts, honed over years of service, flared to life. He dropped the last bag into his truck, eyes locked on the scene unfolding. Duke's bark intensified, echoing against the rows of parked cars. It wasn't noise, it was a signal. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The man muttered something to the woman and tried to quicken his pace toward the van. But Duke was already pulling at his leash, muscles taut, every sense screaming urgency. The sound of that bark wasn't just warning, it was command, demanding attention. Nearby, two off-duty officers leaving the store stopped in their tracks, their focus drawn by the German Shepherd's relentless alarm. They exchanged quick glances before heading in the same direction. Duke pointed. Thomas tightened his grip on the leash. "Easy, boy," he whispered, though his own pulse had begun to race. Duke never reacted without cause. And if this was the moment he chose to sound off, then something dangerous was hiding in plain sight. The man's smile faltered as the sharp echoes of Duke's bark rolled through the parking lot. The elderly woman hesitated, tightening her grip on her cane. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice soft, quivering with uncertainty. The man leaned closer, his tone syrupy but strained. "Don't worry, ma'am. Just a noisy dog. Let's get you inside the van so you can sit down," He tugged gently, but his hand gripped too firmly, steering her forward with urgency. Duke lunged, barking louder, his body a wall of fury and focus. Thomas's voice rang out, firm and clear. "Hold it right there." His Marine training had returned in a flash, his stance steady, eyes locked on the man. The two off-duty officers, already moving closer, broke into a run. One called out, "Sir, let go of the woman." Their voices cut through the air, commanding, authoritative. The man froze mid-step, eyes darting, calculating. For a split second, his grip loosened, and the woman stumbled, nearly losing her balance. Duke growled deep, the kind of sound that promised he would strike if given the chance. "I was just helping her," the man stammered, his expression flickering between charm and panic. But his quick glance toward the van betrayed him. The sliding door stood open, its interior dimly lit. On the floor inside, a pair of heavy blankets lay spread out, along with a roll of duct tape and an unmarked cardboard box. The sight chilled Thomas instantly. This was no act of kindness. The woman's breathing quickened. She pulled away, fear dawning on her face as she realized the stranger's intent had never been good. She turned her eyes toward Duke, the barking shepherd who had refused to let her vanish quietly into the dark. The officers advanced, hands ready near their belts. "Step away from the van, now." One ordered. The man's jaw tightened. In that heartbeat, Thomas knew what was about to happen. The stranger shoved the woman aside roughly and spun, ready to run. But Duke reacted faster than any human could. He surged forward, leash straining, his bark turning into a fierce booming roar. The sudden movement was enough. The man stumbled, his escape cut short as one officer lunged and tackled him to the ground. The other snapped handcuffs around his wrists in seconds. The man cursing and twisting under the weight of authority. The elderly woman clung to her cane, shaken but safe, her voice breaking. "He said he was giving me a ride." I thought he was being kind. Tears welled in her eyes, her frail shoulders trembling. Thomas placed a steadying hand on her arm. "Ma'am, you're safe now." "He's not going to hurt you." Duke's barking slowed, turning to low growls, his body still stiff but his eyes softening as they shifted back toward the woman. He inched closer, sniffing at her gently, as if to reassure her himself. The parking lot, moments ago ordinary, now felt like a battleground of shadows and truth. What had started as an evening chore had uncovered something darker, a plan that could have ended in silence. If not for Duke's refusal to stay quiet, the man was hauled to his feet, wrists bound, his face stood in defiance. But it was over. Officers searched the van while Thomas kept a steady hand on Duke's harness. The elderly woman stood a few feet back, her cane trembling in her grip, her eyes still wide with disbelief. One of the officers called out from inside the van, his tone grim. "There's more in here, bags, ropes, and a phone with strange messages." He stepped out holding evidence sealed in plastic. The weight of what had almost happened pressed heavy on everyone watching. This wasn't an innocent mistake. This was a plan. The woman's voice cracked as she whispered, I didn't even know him. He just said he'd help me carry my groceries." Her face crumpled at the thought, the realization of how close she had come to stepping into danger she hadn't seen. Thomas crouched slightly to meet her gaze, his voice calm and steady. "Ma'am, you don't need to blame yourself. Sometimes the worst things hide behind the kindest faces." But Duke saw what none of us did. The German shepherd stood tall beside them, chest broad, his intelligent eyes steady on the woman. His tail gave a single wag as if to remind her that she wasn't alone. The woman reached out hesitantly, her wrinkled hand brushing through his fur. A faint smile broke through her tears. "You saved me, didn't you, boy?" She murmured. Duke leaned gently into her touch, the sharp bark that had stopped her steps now replaced with quiet strength. For Thomas, watching the moment was a reminder of every time Duke had guarded his life in places far from home. It didn't matter if it was a Battlefield overseas or a quiet parking lot in his hometown, the dog's purpose never changed. Protect, warn, save. The crowd that had gathered began to disperse as the suspect was driven away, the red and blue lights fading into the night. The parking lot returned to silence, yet for the woman, Thomas, and Duke, nothing about this evening would ever be forgotten. As paramedics checked the woman over, she gripped Thomas's hand firmly. "If it weren't for your dog, I wouldn't be here. You don't know what he's done for me tonight." Thomas gave a small nod, his throat tight. He looked down at Duke, who sat calmly at his side, eyes alert as ever. "I think he knows," Thomas replied quietly. Later, as they returned to the truck, Duke hopped into the back with practiced ease, glancing once more across the lot as though making sure every shadow was clear. Thomas slid behind the wheel, starting the engine, but his eyes lingered on his partner in a world full of unseen threats. Sometimes it wasn't strength or weapons that made the difference. Sometimes it was the unshakable instincts of a loyal dog, unwilling to let danger hide in plain sight. In that night, an elderly woman walked away safe because Duke refused to stay silent.